items there.
Okay, we're going to move on to our action items for this evening, and I'd like to move that we combine the agenda and action items A, B, C, and D.
So moved.
Mrs. Becker? Mrs. Howard? Any discussion?
Hold on a second, what are we combining?
It's all items.
A, B, C, D, and E.
Did you roll call them, right? So I can-
Yes, there'll be a roll.
Yes.
Can we separate something, please?
What would you like to separate?
Hold on a second. B6.
The district calendar.
Correct.
We need a motion to, so originally it was moved by Mrs. Howard and seconded by Mrs. Becker.
It was Ms. Becker and
Ms.
Mrs.
Becker.
Howard.
Second.
The other way around,
Whatever.
sorry. Okay, and now, Mr.
Motion
Simmons,
to-
motion to amend.
Is there a second? Mrs. Lax.
And this is to remove B6
B6.
from the vote. Okay, and also, please note that there was an agenda item that was sent home to the board, A6, the approval of the Board of Education Ad Hoc Committee, that is part of this. I just want to make sure that that is
That's on
included.
the-
That is,
That's
yes, that
on
was
the-
sent home to
But it's
everyone.
already on this agenda.
It is on the agenda, it was not on the agenda that
Sent home.
initially went home to the board.
And there's also
And there's
a-
a personnel addendum.
E2 on the
E2.
table.
So we need first a vote on amending the original motion.
Is that a roll call? or is
And no,
it-
voice vote is fine.
Okay.
Okay.
All those in favor of the
Aye.
amended motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, we now have an amended motion. Okay, any discussion on the amended motion?
Just the amended motion.
Yes, the items
Oh,
contained.
the A through D.
Correct.
E.
E, A through E.
Mr. McAvoy?
Please bear with me. Let the record show, too, that I'm working on I'm working off my Chromebook so that I don't have to use as much paper. So please bear with me as I scroll down. I sat here maybe 3 board meetings ago and said something to the effect that that'd be the last time maybe I'd be talking about Edgeboro. Edgeboro with regard to that new facility that we're going to have for combination transportation and maintenance department. But we have a change order as C1, so Mr. Giuliana, maybe just a quick, I'm just looking for an explanation on the expenditure of $17,000, $818.47.
Well, there are a variety of items included in this.
Stuff that just comes up and it's unexpected.
Some unexpected revisions to plan, and as excavation was taking place, rerouting of some conduit piping, revision to drainage, how we're going to handle drainage coming off of the building, revision to the sidewalk that was being installed between the building and the northern parking area, adding a bottom rail to the fence that's
Right.
going to surround the entirety of the property. So there are a variety of things that as they come up and as we are watching the progression of work and as the contractor comes up with issues that perhaps may be a better way of addressing something, they're taken into consideration and we move forward from there.
And we can expect this maybe again next month.
Yeah, it's possible. At this point, the projects have a contingency in them allowing for
Allowing for
any
this.
potential
Is there a
changes.
dollar and cent max for these contingencies?
Well, statutorily, the maximum is 20% of contract, but we're not anticipating going to
Right.
20% of contract. This contract has a $60,000 allowance for contingencies, just in case.
Wanted the explanation, thank you. C2, another change order on the windows at, I think it's the windows
Yes.
over at,
C2 is the window and door replacement at Irwin. This is essentially a closeout of the project. There was a little more than $46,000 remaining in a contingency allowance. And so that is now being used to reduce the overall contract and comes back to the credit of the board.
Nice. Those are the
That
ones
you
I-
like.
Those are the ones I really like. I want to, let's see, abstain from D1A, if now is the time for me to say that.
During the
Time of
roll
the
call.
At the roll call, okay, continuing down as I push my scoreboard. Going down to D9, I see a big expense there, just looking for clarification on the $4.2 million.
D9 is with regard to a lease purchase that was entered into back in 2013. The scope of work for that lease purchase related to the air conditioning installation at the Churchill Junior High School science rooms, window and boiler replacement at Irwin, the roof replacement at Bound, girls' locker room renovation project at the high school. Those projects have been completed, and there are funds remaining within that original $4.2 million lease purchase. And so this resolution approves the repurposing of that balance of funds toward projects that are currently in process, which are namely the media center renovations at the high school in Churchill, cabling and installation of access points for building-wide Wi-Fi access at the elementary schools, Hammersholt, Churchill, and the high school, the installation of security access and control systems at various schools throughout the district, and I think that is the extent of it. Now, I will tell you that the remaining funds are not sufficient to cover everything, but this resolution enables us to be able to repurpose and prioritize how to cover those other projects.
Thank you.
Mrs. Chu?
Just a follow-up question to that then. So the amount that is then reallocated for the, to use the lease funds, then that is released from the general fund? What happens to that?
Those funds are retained currently in an escrow account by the banking institution who, that provided the financing. And so the principal remaining funds remain in that account. As we draw against them, we submit expenditure reports to the banking institution requesting reimbursement and
Against this fund?
Against this
Actually,
fund.
What I meant is, these other projects that you mentioned were already budgeted items, right?
yes, and these
So-
projects have come out of the capital reserve fund. So what we would essentially do is repurpose the expenditures against the lease purchase and be able to refund the capital reserve fund for other purposes.
I'm good.
Are there any other questions then on those items? And we can do a roll call.
We can. Okay. Mrs. Becker,
Yes.
Mrs. Chu,
Yes.
Mrs. Howard.
Yes.
Mrs. Lax.
Yes, with the exception of an abstention on item A3.
Mr. McAvoy.
Yes, with a abstention on D1A.
Mr. Philipchak.
Yes, with abstain on A3.
Mr. Simmons.
Yes, abstain A3.
And President Cohen.
Yes.
Motion carries. Now you have
Now we're going to move
B6.
to the item B6. That's on the table, and I'd like a motion to approve item B6.
I'm sorry, what are we on?
We're on the item that was
Oh, so moved.
separated. Mrs. Howard, Mrs. Becker, and then discussion. Mrs. Lax.
Where to begin? I'm sorry. Okay, so I have a couple of questions. One is, and I know we talked about this, the early start date before Labor Day.
Right.
I have some concern about that, so I wanted to know the rationale on that. I realize we're trying to get our kids out early, but the 16th is pretty early. The 22nd still gives people time for camp and all the things that parents worry about. my concern with starting before Labor Day is that we haven't given people notice. People make plans. We have parents that are affected with family vacations that come back for Labor Day, as well as staff. So I just wanted to bring that up and see if there was any, apologies, I'm cutting a bad cold, any more thought process given to possibly starting after Labor Day. I don't know, I have a lot of questions, so I don't know if we want to take them one at a time? Or?
If we could take them one at a time.
Okay.
We did do a historical look back. The calendar committee did that in terms of number of times that the district actually started before Labor Day. So there's a history of actually starting before Labor Day.
It was 15 years ago, though.
Right.
Yeah.
But I believe, I think I'm speaking for the calendar committee, one of the driving factors was the completion of the school year, graduation, when they would actually get out. And so that became a factor driving the decision on the other end, getting our mandated days in and actually starting before Labor Day. That was the recommendation from the calendar committee.
Okay. I just personally don't think, that's my point, I guess, is we're talking about 3 days, that if we were getting out on the 22nd, I don't feel as if we're asking these kids to get out on the 26th or 28th.
Yeah, Mrs. Warren was actually on the calendar committee. Would you mind speaking to that?
Yes, the rationale for starting before Labor Day was that we had, last year at this meeting, actually, for the calendar, there was a discussion about gaining input from the community, and that's what we did this year. So and I think that you saw those comments, many parents wanted to get out early, and the reasons were camp and older students working. So that was one theme through the whole, the recommendation of the calendar committee. That was one theme that we stuck with for most of the time in that, we definitely wanted to end early for those reasons.
Okay, but I guess my point is that I don't think that ending on the 21st or 22nd has any impact on camp.
How many parents were on the committee?
There were. This is the historically, this is the people that are on it. There were 2 parents.
And these 2 parents had a burning desire to go to school and end on the 16th? No. This was based on community input. We had people email us for weeks. I have a long list of the input. I see.
And would be happy to share that with you.
So was it a survey that was done?
Well, that's what, yeah, how did you pick who was polled on that?
How did I pick who was on the committee?
No, you're saying there were 2 parents, but you're saying you had other parents.
There were 2 parents on the calendar committee.
Who got the survey? Yeah, who got the survey?
There wasn't a survey.
Where was it?
It was
No.
on the website.
There was a request
Okay.
that went out to parents in the e-news and on the website. It was there for weeks that parents could give input.
Okay.
So we have a long list of input. People said what holidays they would like off. They said when they would want the year to end, when they wanted to start. We have all kinds of opinions on that.
Okay, so parents that found it. It wasn't something that was, we don't have.
Well, it was sent in the e-news.
No, I understand, but I'm saying that not every parent responded to it, which is, you're right. You
No,
pointed out
not
there
every
that's
parent.
there.
Actually,
But you're saying that of those parents, they all expressed an interest to start before Labor Day? That's, I guess, my question.
no, I'm
I know
saying
you
that a
talked to me earlier.
percentage of the people, and we tallied up the information, a percentage of the people, that was a theme that ran through the parents who responded. People had different issues. So, for example, people commented about religious observance.
Mm-hmm.
I have that information. That was shared with the calendar committee. People commented about when they wanted to start, when they wanted to end.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm tuning into. That's what I'm asking, if they specifically wanted to start before Labor Day. I understand the idea of not wanting kids out too late. That's always been something we struggle with, and I know, a couple of years ago, when we had dire circumstances, there were issues where kids with graduation and camps and jobs. I don't see that as something we should have to focus on every year, because, the camps are set to start knowing that the kids are getting out at a certain time in June. So I was just curious, when you say people wanted earlier, dismissal, end of year, excuse me, were they specifically stating that they wanted to go to school before Labor Day? That's, I
No,
guess, my question.
no.
So, I want to understand, in the survey, Mrs. Warren, you said a percentage of folks said they would prefer to get out early. A majority of those responding wanted to get out? Or?
I have the list here with me. I do not have the percentages. I did share
I'm sorry,
that
I
with the
missed-
calendar
Only because,
committee.
honestly, and this is not your fault, this is the first time I'm hearing we had a survey, even though it was on the website, I didn't catch it, but
The
I didn't know that that was...
information, I thought.
Yeah, I didn't know
shared
that that
with
was
everyone.
done that way. I don't remember that. I would have probably remembered that, but, okay. Sorry, Mrs. Lax.
That's okay. No, I apologize, I don't mean to put you on the spot. As I said, I just have the concerns over the Labor Day. That's why when you said that you had people, I was just curious. Parents saying in general that they want the kids out earlier, to me, is very different than parents saying, I would like to start before Labor Day. And I'm also curious in terms of the staff representation then, because I also know we do have a large percentage of staff that have families, so it impacts them.
The principals actually sent this request to the staff, so all staff members knew that they could respond to this.
Yeah.
I will tell you, we had about 5 staff members respond. Because when I asked for people's response, I asked I wanted to know, not necessarily their name, but how they were connected with the district. And, whether they had a child at what particular school, or somebody would say they were a teacher.
Oh, it's too bad.
Historically, parents have always asked to get out early, And as Mrs. Becker just pointed out, Labor Day's late this year. So sometimes it happens, very rarely. But when you have to look at the whole year, I'm in support of it.
I've always wanted to get out of school middle of June, because that's kind of what I grew up knowing. Sometimes it doesn't work. The concerns I have here, and this is probably the most difficult calendar I've ever remembered putting together for, I guess, a variety of reasons, probably most of which is Mrs. Howard's pointing out. There are 4 holiday days in September, and that just starts the school year. So we got challenges right away. We're now going to school on President's Day, which I have a concern about, because that's always a potential snow makeup day. We are off the 12th of October and the 4th of November, going only one day then. Going one day the week in November, to me, is not a terribly meaningful day. And to Mrs. Lax's point, it just, going into school on Monday just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, and I would...
You said November?
November 2nd. We go to school on the 2nd, and we have off the rest of the week. That doesn't make sense to me.
Well, we had a half day on Tuesday, which was actually another concern. I know
Oh, it's
last
single
time
session, oh, so we go...
We chopped it
okay,
up, but
all right.
I personally happen to like not having the kids in school on election days because the public is in the school.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we've done that. I know last year they had Monday and Wednesday, which was not ideal. The parents that are taking their kids out, take their kids out. I just always felt that was a safer way.
We're never able to be consistent with that.
Can
understand.
I just tell you that one of the challenges with this is trying to finish up, number one, trying to place staff development. We heard very strongly from teachers about when the appropriate time for staff development was. And so that got blocked out at a time when teachers come back to school, they get to work with their students, and then they're not faced with staff development right as they open school. They get a chance to form their ideas and identify their concerns. So that's why the staff development days are placed there. We are also trying to figure out, when we end the year, the last student day becomes the last teacher day. Now, this doesn't happen in all cases, but we get a full day credit by students attending a single session on election day. We have to get our 180 mandated days in. So it becomes a challenge of meeting the mandate of the state, and then trying to find the logistical fit that works with closing schools down. And I also have to state to you, and I know you know this, but with a number of our schools not air-conditioned, getting the students out earlier and the teachers out earlier is really important, especially if we end up with a very hot summer. So the earlier the better. And we are planning to do some construction work at some of the schools, which will require contractors to get in there right away for air conditioning 2 of our schools. And so the quicker they're out, the faster the contractors can get in, if we can get that construction contract resolved. And we anticipate that we will. So those are just some factors that I wanted you to consider as we were dealing with this.
No, it makes sense. And I want to apologize too, because in no way am I insulting or, you and the calendar committee. I sat in it once. It's probably one of the hardest committees to sit on because there is so much to consider. As I said, these were just two things for me personally that I just worried about the impact of starting before Labor Day, just because of people's booked vacations, things like that, and then the being in school on Election Day, having the kids in the buildings, but I understand your points. This is just my views.
Okay.
No one may agree, and Holly just said, you may be fine with starting before Labor Day. This is just my personal opinion.
Mr. McAvoy?
As the Board of Education member on the calendar committee, I was taking the place of my distinguished colleague, Mrs. Howard, who could not make the meeting, and I recall the meeting vividly, because I was the newbie on the committee. And what was great about the meeting that Mrs. Warren ran the room, when we have our policy meeting or whatever the meetings that are out here, we had a packed house for the meeting, and I thought it was well represented with regard to all the different aspects of the stakeholders involved. And oftentimes, I recall what was great, Mrs. Corburn on the elementary level, Dr. Gaskill now. It's the first time I saw that. I saw Dr. Gaskill.
It's been for about a month and a half.
And Dr. Vanilla, and I was sitting with Dr. Vanilla. And the questions kept going from the parents there, and the PTA people kept going to the administrator. What do you want? What do you think? What do you think? And just to Mrs. Lack's point, they were unanimous on starting before. They all wanted that. So when I heard that's what the administrators want, and I guess that's what their teachers want, then that's what I. So I'm not talking about the end of school, or as Todd said, other factors, but there was a big push by all the stakeholders at that meeting for this early start, because that's just the way the calendar was working out this year. And then there was some discussion about the end of the year. Since we were starting early, boy, it's going to be good. We'll be able to secure the Trenton facility with a phone call tomorrow, which obviously didn't happen. I'm sure there's been a tentative phone call down there, but I just recall the conversation being unanimous about this year starting early, and everybody going, woo, we're starting early, we're getting the kids out early. My comments to the calendar.
And what about the parents that were on that committee?
The parents, I felt that the parents were the PTA people. And, everybody had insight. They were in full support of starting before Labor Day, as I recall. I could pull out the notes, you know that.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Becker.
First of all, Kevin, a question. There were staff represented on the committee also?
Yes.
And were they also?
Yes, because what was nice about it, it was in the middle of the school day, so the staff got compensated or substitutes, and they
But
came.
they were on the committee, and they also?
Yes.
Okay. Lori, this was a real tough one for me, because I will tell you that almost the few times we've been presented with this since I've been on the board, I have always been an advocate of, got to start after Labor Day. Can't start before Labor Day. Can't start before Labor Day. Until we have a calendar like this, when Labor Day comes out so late. It's, talk about a rock and a hard place. Because if you start after Labor Day, we're going to school through the end of June. And all I kept thinking about was, I don't know, was it last year or the year before, when that one kid couldn't come to graduate? Oh, it was Sandy.
Well, so I'm
Yeah,
saying, I remember we
okay.
had that, but that was.
I remember how completely heartbroken this one kid and his parents were that he couldn't come to high school graduation. And I kept thinking, if we go to the end of June, we can't predict how many colleges are going to have an orientation.
Where are you getting the end of June? I'm sorry, because.
Okay, I'm considering,
22nd.
because you're
'Cause I'm seeing
talking,
the
you're
22nd.
talking 3 days.
Yes.
Putting 3 days back, okay?
Okay.
So that means it's got to go 3 days later, which means
The 20
graduation's the 22nd,
The
right?
21st, from the 16th to the 21st.
Oh, okay, okay.
That's what I'm saying, to me,
Okay.
that's not.
But the thing is, because of the configuration of the calendar, because Labor Day is coming out so late, that kind of pushes everything so that a college that would have an orientation normally the last week of June, perhaps it's the last week of June this year, it's like the black is the new black, becomes that week of the 20th. I kept thinking, what if we start after Labor Day and somebody else has to miss high school graduation? And I never want to think that we're that big a district that we forget about, like, one kid.
Oh, no, we should never forget about one
No,
kid.
I know, but-
I have trouble using that particular scenario because that was Sandy. I mean, that was an awful situation, which God willing, we won't have again, where we had to put in
No, what
so
I'm
many more
saying
days.
is that colleges across the country didn't adjust their orientation schedules because of Sandy. We had to adjust our schedule
Yes.
to go longer in the year, and because of that, it started coinciding with a college orientation, okay? I almost always say start after Labor Day, okay, for the very reasons you mentioned. But looking at how late Labor Day comes out this year, I think that we have to start before, because we really run a risk. We haven't taken a poll of when colleges start orientations or when camps start, because there's a million of them across the country. But just going on our common sense and historical precedent, this almost leaves us with no choice.
I understand that.
I'm not happy about it.
And look, and camp is great, but I also think you have to be careful basing a calendar on kids going to camp, and doing what's best for, the whole year. So I understand, and it's certainly a consideration, kids going to camp, but we also probably have a very small percentage of kids that actually go away to summer camp, is my guess. It's fine, because obviously this is what they came up with, this is what people want. The only thing I would ask in the future is maybe we can look ahead to dates and have more notice where we say, hey, it looks as though 2019 is going to be a year, it's going to be late, and maybe give people more planning. That would be the only thing I would say. We have to do what's best for the kids in the district. Dr. Valesky made a great point about the air conditioning in the buildings. I personally don't see it, to me, as a camp issue,
Yeah,
forgetting the
it's
kids that
not-
are earlier.
I don't
To me, it's more an issue
I don't see it as a
of
camp.
knowing that some of our elementary schools, that
Yes.
these kids could potentially be sweltering, so.
Well, you have the same air conditioner issue on September 2, 3, 4.
Yes.
I mean, so it's the other side, so.
Well,
Is there any new points on this, though? I mean,
Yeah,
honestly,
well,
I think
You're
we
right,
need-
yeah,
Yes, no, there
it's-
is, I think we're going to have a snow day issue, but not having President's Day off. This is bizarre.
Well, I'd also like to have President's Day off.
It's just because we've always relied on that as a potential makeup day for snow that could happen, hey, like right now, because the one on the 18th, which also should be a potential makeup day, is a little bit early in the snow season to really rely on it, but it should be a usable makeup day if necessary, so we don't, so we're able to leave March
Where do you
intact.
see the 18th?
January 18th is a closed day. It should be a first potential makeup day if
That's a
we have
holiday.
snow. Okay, but we've always had that, and President's Day, rather, we've always had as a makeup day with school closed. We don't have a
Yes.
President's Day off at all, which is unique and new.
Todd's right, Todd's right, we usually have those as makeup days.
They're potential. If we have
Yeah,
early
that's
snow,
right.
so we
They're
get
the
those
first.
makeup days out of the way.
Yeah,
The 18th would be one, and the 22nd, which is President's Day, which we don't even have off, would also be another potential makeup day, which is a better place to place those days off, or make them in service,
Can I-
whatever.
so Can I also, so was the decision made, because you have Columbus Day instead of, instead of President's Day, but I know you have Columbus Day, you don't have, was there a reason for having that off versus President's Day?
This
Or,
calendar has been based on discussions that have happened. This is this calendar does not represent every recommendation made by the
Yeah,
calendar
the
committee.
President's Day is a new thing, because I don't think that ever came up at the committee or since. So that just kind of appeared.
What's the longest we could put this off if we really wanted to still consider those days?
I think we're up against the wall. People are looking for a calendar to make plans.
Yes.
Well, I think the graduation facility is probably the issue.
Right. To Mr. Simmons' point, we only have so many days. We tried to put a complete week of spring break in March. And so we would have, if we had snow days, obviously, we're going to have to look at days within those holidays that we would have to go to school. There's no option. And we're not going to know, depending on the weather, we could know when we need a snow day before the winter holiday. We may not know until the spring holiday. It just depends on the time of the season.
I mean, in all due respect, we've been tossing this around for a couple of weeks now, and we've all gotten this in our board packets days ahead of this meeting. So I think that in light of the fact that we got to get graduation firmed up and teachers plan their curriculums around a calendar, we've all had an opportunity to get input. I think we need to...
You do, but let me just say...
Keeps changing.
No, it's not that.
Okay.
The only problem I have is because, based on the way we have to do things, we haven't been allowed to discuss it. So I was told that we weren't allowed to discuss it until we're in open session. So when you say, we've been sitting on this, yes, I've known this for a while, but I wasn't able to discuss my concerns with anyone until right now. That's the only thing that I find a little difficult. That it's been sitting out there for so long, but this is the first time I'm actually allowed to voice my concerns and have discussion. At the same time, we're saying, hey, now you have no choice, we're doing it right away. So, but I'm one person, so I get it.
Okay.
Well, and this is, like I said, there's been multiple versions. This is the first one with no President's Day, and that's a significant departure from the norm. So it's not just a little thing. That's a big deal, I think. Some people will be questioning that.
Well, at this point, I think we still need to make a decision and vote up or down that calendar. If it's voted down, we'll go back and look at it. If it's voted up, I think we have to just live with that decision. So I think it would just be better if we do this as a roll call.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I just have one
sorry.
question. And Todd, talking about President's Day, it's a federal holiday, is that a mandated one? Or is it only one where banks are closed?
There are public institutions that are open. In fact, you've used it to make up snow days, so you can do it. Federal holidays, there's a state law that says that if you have a staff member who wants to take that day off, they have the right to take that day off. They then have to make up the day, because they have a contractual obligation. And I had that in another district where the person had to come in over spring break to make up a day, because that wasn't a federal holiday, and do curriculum development.
That was my concern.
Yeah, it's not going to be illegal. For example, Martin Luther King is a federal holiday. Some districts are open, some districts do half days, in-service days, Veterans Day. I mean, there are federal holidays, but there's a statute that deals with employees and their rights on those holidays.
How does it deal with the students? Does it
What's
have any
that?
effect on the students if it's a federal holiday? If the students
No.
I'm just curious.
It's interesting.
Mr. Giacomo, Columbus Day is one of those days too, right?
It is.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Right. Yes.
Mrs. Becker?
Yeah.
Mrs. Chu?
Yes.
Mrs. Howard?
Yes.
Mrs. Lax?
No.
Mr. McAvoy?
Yes.
Mr. Philipchak?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
No.
President Cohen?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay.